Saint Birgitta of Sweden. Passages from her writings, just volumes 1, 2, and 3, as translated by Dennis Searby and Bridget Morris. On the topic of mercy and justice, elsewhere I've recorded Saint Birgitta's readings straight on various topics. This time I'm reading just a few passages on each topic, along with some commentary. So, chapter 19 of book 1. But those who are now said to be wise sin even more against me. For I gave them sense, understanding, and wisdom in order for them to love me. But the only thing they understand is their own temporal advantage. So our reason is for so much more than just a means to our own earthly ends. Our reason ultimately is for knowing God. Reading on. They have eyes in their head, but look only to their own pleasures. They are blind as to giving thanks to me, who gave them everything. Since nobody, whether good or wicked, can perceive or understand anything without me, even if I allow the wicked to incline their will to whatever they like. So this, she's saying that, or God is saying to her that our understanding needs to be enlightened by God to know. So the act of knowing itself and of reasoning, of understanding, thinking itself, happens by the divine light. Choose your analogy or your metaphor, but the point is that apart from God's enabling, we can't even think straight. That's not to say that then that God doesn't allow everyone some measure of grace to go on living their lives, even if they choose to do that in evil. And to think well doesn't mean you can't be an atheist and do mathematics well. But just like life itself, just like everything, including our understanding, it's dependent on God's present grace, God's sustaining our abilities, our very lives, all of creation, presently, or it wouldn't be. Reading on. Moreover, nobody can be virtuous without me. I could now use that commonly cited proverb, everyone despises the patient man. Because of my patience, everyone thinks I am terribly foolish, and that is why everyone looks down on me. But woe to them when, after so much patience, I make my sentence known to them. Before me, they will be like mud that drops down to the depths and does not stop until it comes to the lowest part of hell. So God is very, very patient. And that patience can be misunderstood for weakness. But it isn't weakness. God's justice will be enacted, exacted. His terrible swift sword, something greatly to be feared. Hasn't happened yet. We can all be thankful that we have more time to amend our lives and to receive His mercy, His grace, and to grow into holiness, to receive forgiveness. But those days are numbered. His justice will be carried out. Okay, going on to, still in book 1, chapter 45, verse 30. They answered him, "Just as the entire world perished at the beginning of the world by the waters of the flood, so too now the world deserves to perish by fire, since iniquity and injustice are more abundant now than then." The Lord answered, "Since I am just and merciful, and render no judgment without mercy, nor mercy without justice, once more I will send my mercy to the world, due to the prayers of my mother and my saints. If they do not want to listen, there will follow a justice that is only so much the more severe." So St. Birgitta is right in the middle of the 14th century, somewhere in the 1350s. And that was a terrible time in the church. Then it was the Catholic Church only, well, except for the Eastern Church. And like now, it was a corrupt, decadent, terrible time in the church. St. Birgitta is no stranger to church corruption. And she knew that God's vengeance would come, but that now it was a time of continued mercy. And so too, in our time, the Catholic Church, the Protestant churches, the Catholic Church is terribly corrupt. And as I heard Simon mention on Church Militant, wisely, I'm responsible for myself. I'm not responsible for all of the church hierarchy. There's precious little I can actually do about it. But I can do something about myself. And that's what I'm responsible to do. So we have to not be all hung up and worried and agitated and having our faith stolen from us because we see apostasy all around us. I simply have to be careful that I myself don't become apostate. It's a word not used much, but certainly happening much. Okay, on to, this is from book 3, chapter 28, starting around verse 7. I'm talking about chapters and verses. Sounds like I'm reading from the Bible to you, maybe, but no, I'm not, and no, I don't consider it to be that, and no Catholic needs to. St. Birgitta was made a saint. Her writings were gone through by the teaching magisterium, so there's nothing contrary to the faith. That doesn't mean that as a Catholic one is required to accept everything that a saint says. But I've certainly found St. Birgitta, she was influential in my becoming Catholic. My son would buy me her books on my birthdays. And so the first one he bought me was before I became Catholic. And kind of a primary reason I would read it is, well, I was always interested in reading Christian mystics, most of whom were Catholic. But I wasn't at all interested in becoming Catholic myself. But I never denied that there were Christians throughout all the centuries, and many of whom I could learn from. I just thought the Catholic Church didn't really exist anymore. Basically just a socialist, New World Order, Marxist kind of institution, gone over the deep end as far as it did have some spirituality, be into like New Age thinking. That was how I viewed the Catholic Church. Unfortunately, that view is largely correct. What I didn't understand was all the homosexuality rampant within the church hierarchy, and protected and promoted even. It's only worse than I thought. But anyway, it's It's the church where there actually is the Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ, not just little tokens or symbols. And so that's how I receive it. And I'm able to receive confession and able to be blessed by the daily readings from the breviary and the missal, and puts me on the church calendar on the 2-year and the 3-year cycles. And so there's incredible depth and richness in Catholicism that I never knew as a Protestant because I wasn't there. It's not to say that I'm not appreciative of so much I learned as a Protestant. I am. It's not to say that there aren't maybe more Protestants living pious lives than percentage-wise than there are Catholics. I wouldn't be surprised if there are. I suppose so. That's great. But anyway, there's a lot in Catholicism that's true and good and biblical that in Catholicism that you're not going to find in Protestantism. All right, so we're on to book 3, chapter 28. This is hell. Here one finds a love for every kind of evil and impurity, a love for every kind of envy and obstinacy. God governs the city as well. This he does by means of balanced justice, the due moderation of punishments, the restraint of evil, and the fairness of the sentences that takes each sinner's merits into account. Some of the condemned are greater sinners, others lesser. The conditions for their punishment and retribution are set up accordingly. Although all the condemned are enclosed in darkness, not all of them experience it in one and the same way. Darkness differs from darkness, horror from horror, hellfire from hellfire. God's rule is one of justice and mercy everywhere, even in hell. Thus, those who have sinned deliberately have their particular punishment. Those who have sinned out of weakness have a different one. Those who are being held only because of the damage done by original sin have a different one again, while the torment of these latter consists in the lack of the beatific vision and of the light of the elect. Still, they come close to mercy and joy in the sense that they do not experience horrible punishments, since they bear no effects of any evil deeds of their own doing. Otherwise, if God did not ordain the number and limit of the punishments, the devil would never show any limits in tormenting them. So I'm speaking quietly because it's, about 1:30 in the morning. My wife's asleep. So I might sound like somebody I used to listen to in high school that I very much appreciated on the radio, only with not nearly the quality of thought or of audio. Bill Pierce, Night Sounds. Loved that show. All right, so now I'm looking at book 4, reading from chapter 99. Certain verses, starting with verse 4. Even so do Christians scorn me, for they regard as meaningless everything I have done and endured for them out of love. They trample me down each time they fear the venerate man more than me. Their God, each time they count my judgment for naught, and fix the time and measure for my mercy according to their own conceptions. They strike me in the teeth whenever, having heard my commandments and suffering, they say, let us do whatever delights us in the present, and we shall obtain heaven nonetheless. Verse 9. Since then I appear as a worm to them, I will now come to life again through my terrible judgment. My coming will be so terrible that those who see it will say to the mountains, fall upon us, cover us from the wrathful face of God. So she's quoting, I think that was from Revelation there. So we think of God's punishment as meaningless. God won't do that. God's merciful, no problem. I can do what I want. A lot of that running around both in the Catholic Church and among evangelicals. We can expect that there are very few, if any, people in hell. Kind of just reserved for people like Hitler. But it's certainly not what Scripture says. It's certainly not what the Church has taught throughout all the centuries. But somehow, now that we have iPhones and smartwatches hooked up to them and coming to the Internet of Things, where everything will be on the Internet by 5G, with our new world order of totalitarian government, I guess we know better now. All right, moving to book 4, chapter 107, verse 22. He makes him blind when the man thinks as follows. God redeemed me through his passion. He will not let me be lost, for he is merciful. God does not scrutinize sin so exactly, given that people are offending him all the time. This proves that his faith is unstable. Having him search my gospel then, to see what account I shall demand of words, and how much greater an account of deeds. Have him also search there, to find out that the rich man was not buried in hell because of theft, but because of his misuse of the wealth granted to him. Again, the devil makes him mute when the man bears the example and words of my friends, and then says, nobody can live like that nowadays. This proves that he has very little hope. I am, of course, the one who has given my friends the ability to live thus decently and chastely. I can also give him a like capacity, if he would only place his hope in me. So yes, God still does expect holiness, and his power still is sufficient. And it might mean that we will look sort of odd in our culture. If we might need to get rid of the Netflix, because it keeps popping up with vile, sick movies that everyone else is watching and talking about at work, so we kind of fall into it ourselves as we come home. We're tired from a long day of work, and understandably we just want to sit in front of something and relax, and then get bombarded by all kinds of nasty temptations. Yeah, that's going to have to go. Or maybe you're able to use Netflix well. I found myself getting bombarded here and there by shows that I thought would have been fine and weren't. So my wife and I just got rid of it altogether. And that is God's grace, leading us into making decisions that will help keep us from evil. And verse 27, the devil binds his feet when the man pays no attention to his thoughts and affections, when he does not consider the form of his temptations, when he is so intent on gratifying his neighbor and his own flesh that he pays no attention to saving his soul. Verse 31, however, I would run to meet him as a father, if he would but turn toward me. In what sense? By having the intention of doing as much as he can. As it is not licit for the son of a man to take a woman to wife against her will, so it is not licit for the son of the virgin. The human will is like a tool by which divine love is introduced into the soul. Just as a miller who wants to split stones first looks for cracks into which he first inserts his finer tools and then heavier ones until the stone is broken, so too I first look for the good will and then pour my grace into it. And then, as the person's activity increases and his will makes progress, a larger amount of my grace is also added, until the stone-like heart is converted and grows into a heart of flesh, and the heart of flesh becomes a spiritual heart. All right, then we move on to the last volume we'll consider. So this is volume 3. And the book number is book 6, paragraph 35. Book 6, chapter 75. Verse 9. This is our last passage to consider. Are you, who are most merciful, going to inflict everlasting punishment on someone who cannot sin everlastingly? Men do not believe that this accords with your dignity. You exalt mercy over justice. And humans do not inflict everlasting punishment on those who offend against them. The Spirit answered, I am truth and justice themselves. I go to each one according to his works. I examine hearts and wills. As far as heaven is from earth, so far are my ways and my judgments from the decisions and minds belonging to the world. Hence, is it so strange that a man who does not reform his wickedness while he lives and is able should be punished when he is no longer able? Why should those who wish to live forever and sin forever be allowed to dwell in my most pure eternity? Therefore, he who reforms his sinful behavior while he is able, may dwell with me forever. For I am eternally omnipotent and live eternally. So we need to have our priorities straight and not get too caught up in current politics, current affairs, current anything, this world. Because it is passing, it is fleeting. What you think is important today, it's going to be gone tomorrow, including yourself. So, eternity is probably worth having thought.